Good afternoon and welcome to the December 15th meeting of the Humboldt County Association of Governments Board of Directors. This meeting is held in conjunction with AB 361 and the Governor's order on a state of emergency. On your screen, you'll see a ribbon with a means to make a public comment. At this time, we will call
Recording in progress.
This meeting to order. Can we get a roll call?
Supervisor Madrone.
Present.
Mayor Jones.
Here.
Mayor Seaman.
Here, but here.
Mayor Atkins Salazar.
Here.
Councilmember Avis. Councilmember West.
Here.
Councilmember Gordon Johnson. Councilmember Mike Johnson.
Here.
And PAC member Arroyo. PAC member Allstrand.
Here.
All right. Thank you. And at this time, we will adjourn as the HCOG board and reconvene as the Policy Advisory Committee. And our first order of business are some presentations and proclamations recognizing our board members.
Should we do public comment?
Not yet.
Okay.
And at this time, I would read Mayor Seaman's proclamation and recognizing her service with the Humboldt County Association of Governments Board. And this proclamation is honoring Mayor Susan Seaman for her service on the Humboldt County Association of Governments Board of Directors. And reading, whereas Mayor Susan Seaman served on the Humboldt County Association of Governments Board of Directors from December 2018 to December 2022, representing the city of Eureka. And whereas Mayor Susan Seaman served as the vice chair on the Humboldt County Association of Governments Board of Directors during calendar years 2021 and 2022. And whereas Mayor Seaman brought her keen insight and was dedicated to enhance safe and convenient travel for all people throughout Humboldt County. And whereas Mayor Seaman worked to promote the mission statement of the Humboldt County Association of Government to develop, operate, and maintain a well-coordinated, balanced transportation system that is safe, efficient, and provides good access to all cities, communities, recreational facilities, and into adjoining regions. A balanced multimodal transportation system includes, but is not limited to, highway, public transit, aviation, marine, railroads, recreation, bicycle, pedestrian, and utility systems. Now, therefore, this governing board does hereby present this proclamation of appreciation to Mayor Susan Seaman as an expression of the board's and staff's gratitude for her dedication of service to the Humboldt County Association of Governments. Thank you, Mayor Seaman.
Thank you. I'm sorry I can't be there today, but I'm glad that I was able to at least tune in and looking forward to seeing y'all out in the community. I'm sure our paths will cross often. So thanks.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your service and dedication to pedestrian transportation and slow down and watch the road campaign. And I've enjoyed working with you in a variety of different ways. So thank you very much. Any other comment or?
I just want to say I also enjoyed working with you on the Slow Down, Watch the Road Commission. And I'm going to miss you. And I know you're going to do well in your next endeavor. And I know why you have to leave, but I think we're all for the worst for it because you were a great public servant for Eureka. So thank you.
Thank you.
Susan, I want to thank you for helping to lead a great partnership between the city and the county, and for all your years of service. Thank you, and blessings to you and your Arcata Economic Development Commission work. It's so important.
Right on. Looking forward to doing great things with the county. Continuing.
Well, thank you very much. You will be missed. And
Chair Johnson, this is Gordon Johnson.
there you are, sir.
Yes, I'm here. I was a little bit late for the roll call. I apologize. Having difficulties with Zoom.
Well, thank you very much. I don't know if you got to hear the proclamation, but
I did hear it, and I'll just accept a ditto.
well, thank you and thank you for your technical expertise during the early and continuing days with Last Chance Grade, the liaison with Congressman Huffman, and the design and selection, and so many different things that you were helpful with that we can't even begin. So thank you.
Thanks very much for the comments, Mike.
Okay, well, thank you. And continuing on to item B in presentations, a California Department of Transportation Road Charge Program presentation from Lauren Prahota with the California Department of Transportation.
Hi, good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for inviting me today. I want to just kind of give an overview of some things we're doing at the state level on the funding front, ask for a little bit of help potentially, and bring up a couple of maybe a little bit in the weed issues that we need to start thinking about together. So just going to start off with a brief overview here of what we're doing. Can everyone see this okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. It's not going to slideshow for some reason, but that's strange. Sorry, my screen just blacked out. Okay, there we go. So I apologize. I can literally have never had this happen with PowerPoint before. Okay, then I'm just gonna wing it for a moment here. So I want to start off with the challenge that the state and local folks are dealing with, and that we're trying to plan ahead and work out a solution to. As many of you know, most of our transportation funding in the state, both at the state level and the local level, comes from the gas tax. And as we look to the future of the gas tax, we have some issues coming our way. And this plays out in a couple of different ways. So first off, our vehicles are getting more fuel efficient, which has many wonderful aspects to it, not the least of which is the effect on our pocketbook, and we all love. But that means people buy less gas, which means they pay less in gas taxes. So it has an impact to our revenue for road maintenance and improvements and other transportation projects. Another issue is as the state moves towards non-gas powered vehicles, those vehicles don't pay gas tax at all. They currently do have a registration fee that they pay of about $100 a year. But on average, Californians pay about $300 a year in state gas taxes. So there's a gap there. So that's another issue. Another issue with the gas tax is just a loss of purchase power. This is especially important at the federal level. There's a federal gas tax in addition to the state gas tax. And that federal gas tax has not been increased since 1993. And so it has lost it hasn't been able to keep up with the price of a lot of the work that we have to do. Now in California, there was introduced a annual increase for inflation through SB1. So at the state level, that's not as much of a factor anymore, but with the federal, it is. And then finally, increasing unfairness in the burden of taxation. Those who own less fuel efficient vehicles, maybe can't afford more fuel efficient vehicles or have different ways of life that they need larger vehicles, are paying more to use the system right now under the gas tax than those who can access those more fuel efficient vehicles. That, and when we think about it in a group sense, that tends to mean that on average, rural drivers are paying more to use the road right now than their urban counterparts. Those who live in disadvantaged communities or on the lower end of the socioeconomic scale are paying more to use the gas tax or to use the road under the gas tax system. So those are issues that we want to start thinking about and explore some new options on how we can fund our roads. So what the state is looking at is something called a road use charge, which is a per mile fee, and it is basically shifting from paying per gallon to paying per mile. So it's kind of a usage fee approach. You pay for how much you use the road, right? And we've been doing this work for a little while, but there are still some issues that we want to tease out, and more importantly, there are communities that we want to specifically engage with. One of the first questions that I get as the leader of this research effort for the state is, well, what about the impact to rural drivers? This is a very, very important question. The issues that play out in rural communities are different than other parts of the state. So we are coming up with another pilot in the beginning of next year that is really focused on engaging rural drivers and tribal drivers as well, because as you know, we have many tribes in California, and we need to understand how this new system could potentially impact them as well. I want to backtrack just a little bit and talk about some of the work we've done in building the system. A lot of concerns that initially come up with a road use charge concept is privacy. You know, how are we going to, you know, is the government going to be tracking me and things like that? We've tested a lot of different options on how an individual can report their mileage, and they range from very low tech to very high tech. On the low tech end, all you need to report is the number of miles you drove in a time period. Government does not need to know your location at all. However, some individuals may find some personal benefits from having other high-tech options that can include location tracking possibilities. Those are some of those high-tech options. They're some of the options we're going to be testing through this pilot. And one of the reasons for that is because you have an opportunity to explore how this high-tech option could affect, again, the tax payments of rural residents. One of the issues in these communities is a lot of times you may spend some time driving on private roads. Private roads, you're still paying the gas tax, but no public money is going to the maintenance of those roads. So theoretically, you really should not be charged a tax while you're driving on that road. So this is one of the things we want to explore, the potential benefits to rural drivers from this option. You know, could that further shape their tax contribution for using the road? So one of the things that I'm, you know, asking for help with is just reaching out to these communities. Rural drivers, tribal drivers, they're some of the hardest folks for us to recruit, and we want to really work to bring their voices to the table, understand the issues, the problems, understand the opportunities, the potential benefits, and really engage in that conversation and see how this might fit into the day-to-day of these communities. We're looking for, our main recruitment period will be starting up in January and February as we're going live with the pilot next March. But we're looking for about 100 tribal participants statewide and about 350 rural residents statewide. And really just, you know, just average folks, not necessarily people who know transportation issues in and out or big government nerds like I am or anything like that, but you know, just real people who want to experience the system and give their input into what the government is looking at. So that's one of the asks that I have for you, just ways to spread the news in your communities, to any public forums or engagement, that we can do to be helpful and give the opportunity to your community to speak to this and give their comments and opinions. We welcome that, and we welcome those ideas and opportunities. One of the specific things that some of your staff asked me to address is getting into some of the nitty gritties of the funding issues when we talk about switching from a gas tax to a road use charge. So this gets into some of the details of the fun issue of transportation funding. So I hope you stay with me and stay awake. But there's actually a number of different revenue streams that we use for transportation in California. The biggest one is the gas excise tax. That's what everyone really thinks about when we talk about the gas tax. That's the main one. But there's also a diesel excise tax. When we say excise tax, that's on a unit, so it's per gallon. But in addition, there's a diesel sales tax. So diesel has two different things on top of it. Then we have some registration fees. We have the road improvement fee, which is the $100 fee on zero emission vehicles. And then we have the transportation improvement fee, which is a fee on all vehicles that all vehicles pay. So those go to different transportation sources as well. So on top of those specific transportation taxes, there's the general sales tax that we all do. Anytime we buy things, a pair of shoes, a car, and when we buy gas. That's a factor that I want to talk about here because part of that revenue goes to local government for operations. And I would be sharing a slide with you right now with lots of fun numbers on it. So it's going to be hard to convey that without the PowerPoint, but I'm happy to follow up with the detail on that. But what it comes down to is there's some specific pieces, about 2.5% of the sales tax, which overall statewide there's 7.75% sales tax. And then it's 2.5% of the diesel sales tax that goes to local government operations, not transportation purposes. And this is where this is an interesting challenge that I invite you to start thinking about with me. Our goal in considering this switch to this new mechanism is to not change any of the way the funding is currently spent. So we're trying to stabilize that funding, right? So we want to make sure that all the revenue that's going to these different things stays the same. The challenge with this 2.5% of diesel sales tax and 2.5% of just regular sales tax is that it's a general local funding source. It does not have to be used on transportation purposes. The reason that is a challenge is the gas tax, the diesel excise tax, the road improvement fee, and the transportation improvement fee are all protected under Article 19 of the state constitution to be directed specifically to transportation purposes. So when we think of potentially rolling those revenue streams into a road use charge, that road use charge would also need to be protected under Article 19 to stay directed on transportation purposes. For that reason, I don't think we want to roll that 2.5% of the diesel sales tax into the RUC because that would mean it would need to be devoted to transportation purposes. And currently local governments are using it more broadly. So this is something we need to think about because even if we just left it in place, again, it's based on diesel sales. And eventually, as again, the state shifts to other fuel sources, that revenue is going to go away. So it's a problem that we need to start brainstorming on how we can stabilize that piece of local revenue. And I look forward to having that conversation. I know it's something that I specifically also need to engage with California State Association of Counties and the League of California Cities on. But your staff did ask me to touch on that technical issue. So I did want to share that point, even though I can't, for some technical reason, give you the pretty numbers on the screen. But that's kind of the overview of what I wanted to talk about today. I mean, if you have questions about the technical sides of the system and how it works and various things, happy to take that. But that's kind of what we're doing. And again, I would love your help in spreading the word about our upcoming pilot. Basically, all people have to do is sign up, choose a reporting device, drive around for 6 months, just as they usually would, and take 2 surveys. And for this, we're willing to compensate them up to $250 each. So appreciate any help on that front, and happy to take any questions.
I've got a couple questions if you guys don't. One of the questions that I've been looking into for the last 3 months is the differential in weight from a EV to a regular internal combustion vehicle. And it varies from like a Chevrolet Impala, late model Chevrolet Impala, to a late model entry level EV. The EV is about 500 pounds more, all the way up to the Tesla Model X Plaid with a drive motor on every wheel, an enhanced battery, all the bells and whistles, and a Cadillac Blackwing, which is kind of the high-end internal combustion vehicle. And the Tesla Plaid is about 2,000 pounds heavier. And weight and roads are not friends and there's going to be more wear and tear, and how we can address that. Because you're going to spend more per mile with a EV than you will with an internal combustion engine vehicle.
So excellent point and question. Weight is one of those interesting aspects to consider. And there are many different aspects you can consider in how you structure a road use charge. For the moment, the state's perspective, again, with our goal focused on stabilizing existing revenue, is to have one flat fee for all passenger vehicles so that everyone pays the same to use the road. How weight fits into that is very interesting. And here we get into the science of pavement. You guys are finding all fun technical details today. The impact of pavement is it's weight, it's also number of axles and how that's spread and things like that. But the relationship of weight to degradation of pavement and bridge is not actually linear. It's actually exponential. And what that means is that at the lower weights, you can go for a while before you have a significant change in impact to pavement. What that means number-wise is pretty much everything under 10,000 pounds has kind of the same impact. It's when you start growing up into, you get 26,000 pounds, 50,000 pounds, and ultimately the 80,000 pounds trucks on the road. That's where you see those huge weight impacts. So when you bring in that battery issue for EVs, on the passenger vehicle side, not that much of an issue because again, they're still under that 10,000 pound range. Where it does start to come into play is batteries in the commercial vehicle side and increasing that weight there. So likely as we look at a road use charge for commercial vehicles, it'll look a little bit different than the passenger vehicle side because of that weight issue.
Okay, I understand the as you said, the exponential issue, the bridge formulas and such as that. And I've seen test runs and information on some of the newer commercial vehicles, and they're actually close to getting them to the same unladen weight as their comparable diesel trucks. So we'll see. That could work out great. But, it'd be interesting to see whether you're actually correct on the higher end, heavier passenger models and trucks. And then,
well, I do have the advantage of having access to a lot of other great minds at Caltrans, and we do spend some quality time thinking about pavement at Caltrans. So I've had our chief asset manager, take a look at this in depth. So I'm pretty hopeful and rely on his advice because yes, I am not an engineer.
All right. Well, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Supervisor Madrone.
Well, thank you for your presentation. I'm wondering if you might be able to send your PowerPoint to HCOG here, our staff, and they can then send it out to us so we can see the wonderful work and the numbers you put together there.
I know.
I think that would be great. I want to appreciate your work. The other thing is, my name's Steve Madrone, and I represent Humboldt County. And as you know, counties are struggling with roads, big time, right? So you guys repave your roads about every 3 to 10 years. We get to repave our roads about every 50 to 100 years. I mean, and I'm not joking. I mean, literally, there are roads that don't get an overlay for 30 to 50 years. We're not holding on to what we have. Our public works director estimates that we're falling $10 million behind every year on deferred maintenance. And so we've got to do something about that, right? And of course, I get a lot of calls, all my board members do, and emails. I pay my taxes. Why aren't you taking care of my roads? You know, we get that all the time, right? And so we are considering doing a sales tax specifically for roads, perhaps with a small carve out for trails and a small carve out for parks. But primarily for roads, designated money, special tax, which requires 2/3 of the vote to pass. My concern is that as we try to shore up our horrible road system, we're going to be competing with the state also trying to shore up its system, which frankly right now, you guys have a gold-plated system compared to the county road system, frankly, in terms of your ability to fund things and get things done. So that competitive nature of what happens on a particular ballot, and as taxpayers sit there and go, well, I'm already going to have increased road charges. Why would I support a sales tax? You know, we start getting into these competitive things between local and state. So I have some real concerns, and I want to make sure that we're communicating about how we make that work. It's a timing issue. It's also a burden issue on the taxpayer. But I do totally understand where you're coming from. You know, it's like a lot of money from cigarette sales goes to First Five Humboldt and First Five programs all over the state. And as people smoke less, then there's less money for the kids, which is probably a good thing. They're smoking less. But it's weird when we tie these things to these, you know, we incentivize reducing the income, right, and stuff, which I get it and I support that. But it's just something to think about. How is all this going to blend together? We're looking at probably March of 2024, but I know all the other counties are also struggling dearly for funding. And by having a local funding source, we can then get a bigger chunk of SB1 while it's still there and while there's money there. So we're trying to increase, you know, revenues for our roads wherever we can. So I just wanted to let you know that and ask that as planning's going forward, we consider how state assets interface with local county assets and how we could actually raise them both up. I mean, in my world, I would love to see us doing something that helps counties, because ever since Prop 13, which is a long time ago, we have not had the money for our roads. And rural counties like Humboldt and others are hurting far worse, I think, than denser metropolitan areas, but I don't know. Anyway, thank you.
All excellent points. And, you know, the self-help county process is a great opportunity for many local regions. And on average, it's more the urban counties who have been able to get those passed rather than rural. And so the rural counties do face that extra challenge. You know, the great news about, you know, when the state passed SB1 a couple of years back, you know, that was an increase for both state and local. And that's part of the funding that we're working to stabilize, because it's not just state revenue, it's county revenue and city revenue. It's everyone, it's transit funding and all of that stuff, and all very critically important. Just to speak to timeline, you know, because I think you're so right. There's a lot of taxation fatigue in the state. Not saying that it's whether it's valid or not, you know, no judgment there. It just is there. So from our side of things, you know, we're still in the research stage, and we anticipate wrapping up those research activities probably mid-2024. After that, it's something the legislature needs to decide if they're going to consider and take up. So hopefully that helps your timing a little bit. But I do appreciate sharing your timing on local issues, because yes, we have to work together on this.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. SB1 does give the county some money, but we need to increase the percentages there, I think, because it's really quite a difference between the way the state's able to maintain its facilities versus how counties are too. So maybe throw that into the mix, some consideration for increasing local local share. Anyway,
Appreciate that. And again, as a research program right now, we're looking at this as a revenue neutral revenue or change in mechanism, right? But when the legislature considers it, they're ultimately the ones who will be making that choice. And, constituents and everyone involved has a right to get in and debate and say, maybe it shouldn't be revenue neutral. Maybe it should be a tax cut, or maybe it should be an increase. That debate will definitely need to unfold.
Thank you. And Mayor Jones.
Yeah, hi. I'm the mayor of a small town of 1,200, and I appreciate your remarks about rural drivers particularly. But I was interested in one thing you said about paying people $250 to have a 6-month test on their cars. And what I was wondering is how you were going to do an outreach to get to those folks. And I know there would be a lot of people in my community that would be interested in doing that, not just for the money, but that certainly is a nice little caveat. Have you thought of any ways you're going to outreach towards people to get them to agree to this?
Well, one, I hope you will tell people. We're taking as many approaches as we can. As I said, these are harder to reach groups. So we'll be focusing our main push in January and February. We're going to be contacting as many local news outlets as we can, working with our Caltrans district PIOs, or public information officers. We're looking to connect with tribes in multiple ways. Word of mouth, internet, things like that. So, our website, www.caroadcharge.com, has a lot of research and information on it, and that's where you go to sign up. And that sign up, we're collecting people kind of expressing interest to sign up right now, even. Again, our main push will be start in January. And then towards the end of February, we'll be sorting through those people who came in and reaching out to those we have space to have participate. So that's kind of the plan of attack. It's different from our previous pilots, which were broad statewide pushes. We're really trying to zoom in on smaller communities. So part of that is word of mouth. And, I'm happy to show up at a community meeting to talk about it. Yes, I am willing to drive from Sacramento. It's my pleasure. Because we want to have that conversation with these regions of the state. I grew up in the North State in Butte County, so a little bit south of you guys, but I know that the way of life is different, and the issues and priorities are different, and I think it's really, really important to have the rural voice at the table, and so that's why we're making such a big push to try to engage in these less populated areas. So if you have any ideas about how I can further engage, I will take them.
You just gave an address that we could get a hold of, an internet address that we could get a hold of information. Could you read that again? Or how do we get that?
Absolutely. It's www.caroadcharge.com. And that will be on the presentation that I will send to you, as well as my contact information. So you're welcome to reach out to me personally as well.
And that's the information we want to get to people if they want to find this interesting. So you'd like us to be announcing things in our council meetings and telling people to get to that site if they are interested in doing this for money. I also just want to back up what Steve said. I ride my bike all over the place, and I ride a lot on county roads. And my bike's expensive. It's really difficult, and it beats us up to get out on these roads that are really crummy. And I know how hard Steve's working on trying to get new ones, but we certainly need to find a balance. We just got all new highways up here, and the roads are just magical to drive on, to ride on. But we don't want to ride on the freeway. But by leaving the counties out, it forces people like us to be out on the main roads, on the highways where you really don't want us because the roads aren't good enough for us to ride our bikes on the county. So I think it really is important that we realize that this is a balance. We need to be able to keep people safe by getting them off the highway and onto the roads that are decent. And certainly that's not happening. So I just want to back that up. And thank you. This is a great deal. One other question: how does this honor system work? I mean, how are you going to make an honor system work and having people turn in their miles? I'd like to hear how you do that.
So it won't be an honored system. I mean, who likes paying their taxes? Let's be honest. I get that. So there will be certain enforcement aspects to it. So going back to the basic structure, what we're looking at is having a state oversight agency that certifies third-party commercial account managers. This could be something, any private business that is good at account management and can partner that with the mileage collection technology. So in our most recent pilot, we tested pairing a road charge collection with things like usage-based insurance or ride sharing, things like that. I can envision something like Verizon, anything that's used to managing accounts, and they'll do the day-to-day interaction with the taxpayer in terms of calculating the mileage, giving them the invoice, collecting the payment. And so all that goes to the state is the number of miles in the payment, because the data doesn't need to all go to the state. It's just those two things. So when it comes to potential fraud, that's one of the things that these account managers, their anti-fraud mechanisms will be certified by the state to make sure that they're meeting, the highest data security measures and privacy policies and things like that. But for those who are not paying, there will be an enforcement system that's similar to the process that works right now for the California state tolling agencies. So if you ever driven down to the Bay Area and driven across a bridge, and you get a bill from Fast Track in the mail, right? And then if you don't pay that bill, they send you another nice letter and say, no, you really need to pay this. And then if you don't pay that, they send you a letter saying, hey, if you don't pay this, we're going to send you to the DMV, and it's going to become part of the registration process. So it's going to be a similar thing that eventually, you may get a hold on your registration if you haven't paid this. And eventually, if you go through all the steps, it can be kicked over to the franchise tax board. So that's an existing enforcement process the state already uses for registration fees and tolling and things like that. So we're planning to just build on top of that process. So yeah, it's not the honor system.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for your presentation.
Chair Johnson, I'm sorry. I think Mayor Seaman had raised her hand.
Oh, Mayor Seaman.
Thank you. I wanted to follow up when you were talking about how to reach particularly those groups that you don't normally get at the table. The state has a program. It's the Community Economic Resilience Fund. You may or may not have heard of it, but the purpose of that fund is to create equitable, sustainable, and resilient economies. It is 4 counties: Humboldt, Del Norte, Mendocino, and Lake counties. And the regional convener is pulling together like a high road collaborative that already has about 50 people on it that represent a really diverse group of folks. I would say if you want to have some good communication, particularly with diverse groups, that you should reach out to Amanda Hickey at California Center for Rural Policy. And their email is ccrp@humboldt.edu. I'm guessing there's a new Cal Poly, but she's still sending this one out, so it'll still get to her.
Okay, California Center for Rural Policy. I think I've worked with them before. Thank you. That is an excellent thought. And they're based at Humboldt State.
CCRP is based out of Humboldt State, but our engagement, the engagement team is from Mendocino County, mm-hmm. and it's truly supposed to be a regional effort. And, equitable and resilient economies really often fall back on access and infrastructure. So I think that there would be working groups created that would be interested in something like this. It is very, very, very new. We've been waiting for a state contract for a very long time. I keep saying I feel like we're 9 months and 2 weeks pregnant. It can happen anytime we'll get that contract. But as soon as it does, things will start happening quickly.
Yes. I know that feeling with procurement, yes. Well, thank you so much for that suggestion. I will follow up on that.
Okay, any other comments online that I may have missed? Or Okay, well, thank you very much for the presentation, and I'm sure that we're all going to be getting back to our constituents and our local agencies, and I know some people in some tribes that I will give this information to so that they can weigh in and you can get a broad spectrum of opinions and information. So thank you, thank you very much. Okay, moving down now to the public hearing for receiving comments on unmet transit needs. And I think Stevie has this one.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. This is Stevie Luther, HCOG Associate Regional Planner. And this item is the annual unmet transit needs, which is the process for soliciting comments from the public about any transit needs that may not be currently met by the existing system. And this is required by the Transportation Development Act prior to allocating local transportation fund, which is the fund derived from a quarter cent of the sales tax. So the purpose of today's hearing is to hear testimony from the public on unmet transit needs. And we also do have an online survey, and you're welcome to call, email, or write in to the HCOG office. You can go to our website where you can find that online form, and comments are accepted until December 31st, 2022.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if we're going to get any, but that information is useful and then open until the end of next week.
Right, and these hearings have been held at all the local jurisdictions and at the county, and we have gotten around 10 comments in online. And then the next step is to bring those comments to the Social Services Transportation Advisory Council, and they will make a recommendation, which I will bring in a report of findings to your board in May 2023, at which point you would make a formal finding of whether there are any unmet transit needs according to these adopted definitions, and if so, if there are any that are reasonable to meet.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. And remember, you have till December 22nd of this to make a public comment if bringing a unmet need to the board. Thank you. At this time, we will, yes.
Yeah, this is Steve Madrone. Normally, I'd be making the comment I've been making for the last 20 years about the need for transit in McKinleyville and North County, but I don't need to make it anymore because there's a nice item on the agenda here tonight that's going to help us tremendously in that way. So I'll wait till we have that on the agenda to speak about, but I'm very pleased to see that movement forward.
Yes. Okay, thank you. And at this time, we'll open it for public comment on non-agenda items. Any item that the public wishes to comment on that is not addressed in the agenda. And seeing none, we will close that public comment time and move on to the consent calendar. And we have 5 items. Assembly Bill 361 findings, approval of the meeting record from October 20th, 22, revised HCOG TDA rules and regulations, the fiscal year 2022 and 23 overall work program, and budget amendment, and a support letter for the Core Hub Offshore Wind Community Benefits Network. Does anybody wish to pull anything? Is there any public comment on?
There's no comment.
Okay, we will entertain a motion.
I move approval of the consent agenda items.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we get a roll call?
Supervisor Madrone,
Yes.
Mayor Jones,
Yes.
Mayor Seaman,
Yes.
Mayor Atkins Salazar,
Yes.
Councilmember West,
Yes.
Councilmember Gordon Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Mike Johnson,
Yes.
PAC member Allstrand.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. We have no items removed from the consent calendar, and we will move to our action item, a Regional Early Action Planning or REAP Grant 2.0 to improve transit and housing in McKinleyville. Resolution 22-27, and I believe our executive director is bringing this.
Yes, thank you. So I want to tell you a little bit about this application we're going after and what we're asking for the resolution for, which is authorization to apply and then receive the funds if we are awarded. And I'll also give a little bit of background about the REAP 2.0 program. So as I mentioned in the staff report, the REAP 2.0 program is building off of 1.0, which HCOG was administering, and you've been hearing about at several meetings. That's where we're doing a variety of technical assistance sub-allocations to the jurisdictions, and we are also working with artists and others to do multimedia catalogs, raising awareness about housing issues. So we have quite a variety of tasks around REAP 1.0. That program was formula-based, so we received a certain amount of money for our region. It was not competitive. With the 2.0 program, it is competitive, but there is a regional set-aside. So there is $6.6 million set aside for the North Coast region, which includes Mendocino, Humboldt, Del Norte, and Lake counties. And also Trinity County. The County of Humboldt is also applying for these funds. But in my research and coordinating with other counterparts in the other parts of our region that qualify under this North Coast, I haven't come across any others that are applying for this. That doesn't mean they're not out there. But I was really motivated by, we've been kind of tracking this NOFO for a while, and realizing that money might be left on the table was not sitting very well with me. So, we have so much need here in our community, and I would hate to think that regional money, wasn't even asked for. So in looking at that, we looked at programs that would benefit, that we've already kind of had in the works. And the McKinleyville microtransit program came to the fore largely because we've done a lot of work on that recently. If you'll remember, just in 2021, we looked at the McKinleyville transit study to see if a fixed route would be appropriate there. And the recommendations that came out of that study was to pilot an on-demand system. And that's exactly what we're going to try to do with this grant. The grant also comes with another component focused on a project that's happening in McKinleyville, which is the We Are Up project. They are a local nonprofit looking to develop inclusive housing for people with and without disabilities. And this also speaks really well to the REAP grant because the portions of the grant we're trying to highlight are really, the reduction in vehicle miles traveled, but also affirmatively furthering fair housing. And the We Are Up project does just that. It provides housing choice for individuals that are extremely hard to house now and don't have a lot of options about where they can live. So I think it's a good focus on McKinleyville. McKinleyville is one of our fastest growing areas in this community. It's where we're going to see more housing, and getting it transit ready so that the people moving there would not need to be car dependent. That's very motivating and fits in very well with HCOG priorities. The We Are Up project would occur right behind the grocery outlet in McKinleyville, so it's right off of Central Avenue. It's absolutely an infill location, which also meets HCOG priorities in terms of, building these 25 or 30-minute cities and looking at how we can make sure that new development has good transit choices. So we're kind of taking those two projects as a suite forward with that McKinleyville focus. We're also making sure that we stay in close contact with the county. Their program is about setting up a regional housing land trust, which we are tracking and very interested in participating in. They also have part of their grant will be to expand their accessory dwelling unit grant program. One thing we're being really careful of is about the budgets for this, so that we aren't competing in the sense of we're not taking the set aside and oversubscribing it just with our two applications. So we're making sure that we're in touch about those budgets. You'll see in the in the resolution that it's worded up to $5 million. We are still finalizing the budget we're going to request. It will not be the full $5 million. The county's application is coming in around 2.6, so we'll be adjusting budgets to make sure, again, that we're not oversubscribing the program. But as we make those final communications and adjustments, this allows the resolution to be flexible. So it's again up to, but we will be very careful in how we ask and make sure that it meets the need, but also does not oversubscribe for our region. So that concludes my staff report, and I'd be happy to take any questions or comments.
I know we have one person that would like to make a comment and ask probably a question.
No big questions. I'm really grateful of HCOG jumping into this arena and seeking these funds. And I commend you for your effort to work with the county and make sure that we're not oversubscribing, but making good use of the funds and not leaving things on the table. I mean, all that stuff is fantastic. And, with the town center process we're doing in McKinleyville, which is coming to fruition, we're close to getting a text together for the ordinance, but then we're going to be doing an EIR and other things that'll take another year. But it's going to densify downtown McKinleyville, similar to what's happening in Arcata in some levels. We're not going 10 or 8 stories, but we're going to go 4 or 5. And it's going to be a wonderful thing for increasing the potential for transit. Because that's what the study found, is that McKinleyville's so sprawled out, it's just not dense enough to make it work. So this is something we've all been waiting for and looking for, but I think that densification will also help us with future choices about transit systems and other things. We don't really have Uber and Lyft here in Humboldt at any level that I think is effective. So really this transit on demand approach is something that's worked in other communities, and I think it will work well in McKinleyville. So I appreciate staff's work on this.
Any other comments, questions?
Sounds great.
I think this is, okay. Yes, Mayor Seaman.
Hey, I just wanted to take the opportunity to say, and Beth has heard me say this many times, that HCOG it's just in a really good position to help us think about housing. So much of our housing is siloed into the different cities, and housing is a regional issue. And I know this is a single project in McKinleyville. It's a fabulous project. But just even making that connection between transportation, infill, and the regional housing need is super important. And I really commend the whole staff for being willing to sort of take on this monstrous but yet consistently named most important issue we have facing us in the coming years. So that's all.
Well, thank you. And it'll be interesting to see how this meshes with the Earth Center, and it's nice that HTA is involved in both projects. And did you have another?
Yeah, a final comment would be that as we expand transit services in McKinleyville, that's going to give us an option to look at HTA's regional system in terms of how it comes out of Trinidad. Right now, it comes out of Trinidad, West Haven area, North County, and it wanders around to a few places in McKinleyville, which adds to the ride for the people coming from the north. So then people don't want to get on because they don't have the hour and a half to ride around before they get to Eureka or to work. So as we develop a more expanded service in McKinleyville that serves that community, I think we'll be able to start modifying how the regional system works. So that will encourage even more people from Trinidad and West Haven to use it if it becomes more of a direct route sort of a system with maybe one stop at a transit center in McKinleyville. But all of this takes time, but I appreciate this effort here. I would move support for Resolution 2227.
And second, this is Mayor Seaman.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we get a roll call?
Chair, there was one public comment that came in that I just want to read into the record. This is from Colin Fisk, who couldn't make it to the meeting today, and he says, as a participant in the McKinleyville Transit Study, which recommended on-demand microtransit, and a stakeholder in the ongoing McKinleyville Town Center planning process, CRTP is excited to see inclusive infill development and a microtransit system proposed for our region's third largest community. These would be important steps toward making McKinleyville healthier, safer, and more livable, and toward meeting the adopted targets in the RTP.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Madrone? Yes. Mayor Jones?
Yes.
Mayor Seaman?
Yes.
Mayor Atkins Salazar?
Yes.
Councilmember West?
Yes.
Councilmember Gordon Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Mike Johnson?
Yes.
And PAC member Allstrand?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And at this time, we will get to the informational items, if there is any. And seeing none, we will move by motion. We will reconvene as the HCOG board and approve the PAC recommendations.
I so move.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. Another roll call.
Supervisor Madrone?
Yes.
Mayor Jones?
Yes.
Mayor Seaman?
Yes.
Mayor Atkins Salazar?
Yes.
Councilmember West?
Yes.
Councilmember Gordon Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Mike Johnson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll move to HCOG staff and PAC member reports, starting with our executive director's report.
Thank you. So a couple announcements. First would be that you may have noticed on your agenda for the first time, we have a land acknowledgement. This was an action item in the regional transportation plan that we just adopted at the beginning of this year. And we've actually run this language through the North Coast Tribal Transportation Commission, and they sent it off to the TIPOs so we could get it exactly right. So from this point forward, this land acknowledgement will appear on our agendas. So I just wanted to call your attention to that. And a couple other announcements. We probably have been talking about this in your jurisdictions, but our SB 361 findings to maintain the remote or hybrid meetings, that program is expiring, or those provisions are expiring. So starting in March, we will need to basically be resuming in person and make sure we have a quorum in person. So that'll be a little bit different. I think for our board is one thing I'm a little more concerned with our TAC and our SS TAC. We have such vast membership for that, and they come from, really rural parts of our county. And so we'll be really strategizing on how we can maintain participation. We've had really good participation since we've been digital or virtual. So we'll be working on that, but we still have a couple months. But just wanted to mention that. And then let's see, the other news, the KTNet route, the former KTNet route, which is the Klamath, Trinity, Orleans. This is going to Orleans, Willow Creek, Hoopa, and connecting Willow Creek so that often it's students coming to Arcata High that were even using this route. It's been out of service since COVID. The Yurok tribe is going to be running that route again. The county just approved the contract for that. And so they have all their funding in place. My understanding is right now they're test running the routes, making sure they can get the timing just right, and they know how long it'll take, and that will be resuming in the next couple of weeks. So we'll be sure to share that information once we know the timing on that. But that's really wonderful development. We've been kind of tracking and nudging along the way for probably over a year at this point. So I'm happy to report that the funding is in place and that'll be starting. Let's see. The other thing is just the Indianola project. We don't have Jeff here to give an update today. There isn't much of an update because, as you'll remember, the bids closed and they were under the engineer's estimate, so we don't need to go back to the CTC. We're still there was a bidder protest that Caltrans is working through, so it shouldn't interfere with the construction start time, which is supposed to be spring of 2023, but still not actually. That project still hasn't been awarded yet, so that'll be the next next milestone. Caltrans staff will be coming in February to give actually a big presentation that will include all of their activities going on Broadway and on 4th and 5th, and then we'll cover Indianola and their updates on that. So really just kind of taking in that whole 101 corridor of the greater Eureka area. There's a lot going on. It'll be really great to get their presentation on that. And then finally, just moving in, this is our last meeting of the year. So I like to thank everybody, especially the outgoing board members. It's been an absolute pleasure, and looking forward to being in person for the bulk of next year. We will kick off January with the 2022 HCOG highlights, similar to what we did last year. So that will be coming, and we'll have our new board members in place so they can see what we've been up to for the last year. So that includes my report. I'll be happy to take any questions.
I believe Supervisor Madrone has a question.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Kudos for having a land acknowledgement. This is fantastic. And a lot of these tribes, a lot of people have never even heard of these names: Chimariko, Lassik. I know some have heard of Matol, but Nongadal, Sinkyo, and Wailaki. So you've got 13 tribes listed here. There are actually 3 other tribes. The Rancherias. They are federally recognized tribes. Rancherias have members that may be more than one tribe. So the Trinidad Rancheria is mostly Yurok, but they have other tribes represented, as well as Bear River Band of the Ronerville Rancheria. They're mostly Wiyot, but they have other tribes involved. And so I think it's fantastic to be listing all these. Some of these that haven't been heard from for a long, long time are actually reforming. Their descendants are actually starting to form, like Wilcott and Wailaki and others. So it's exciting to see this list. There's 13 here. So I would suggest that it would be good to add the other 3 rancherias, because they are actually federally recognized tribes as well, and would appreciate being noted, I think, at the same time. But good job. I mean, that's 16, Humboldt County, 16 tribes, literally, and they're not all active. Of these 16, 7 of them are federally recognized. 3 of those are rancherias. 4 of them are tribes in the traditional sense, but several others are working towards their recognition.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, thank you for that. One of the things that was really educational for me when we were working with the TIPOs, we originally had listed all of those as tribes, and they corrected it to say people, and that tribes are really a contemporary construct. So that was really interesting. But I do take your point, Supervisor Madrone. So, we can definitely make sure, or even, add certainly the note of the federally recognized tribes, especially because those are tribes participating in our tax. So.
Okay, thank you. And at this point, we'll move to the Caltrans report from.
Before we do, we have a hand up here online.
Oh, Councilmember Gordon Johnson.
Thanks, Mike. Beth, I've got a question regarding Indianola. You said there was a bitter protest. First question was that from the apparent low bidder, and can you disclose the nature of the protest?
I'm not sure. I think the low bidder was the one that they had originally selected, and it was the next or the third bidder that had done the protest. The protest was related to the DBE, the Disadvantaged Business Enterprises, and going through all of that process and making sure that was done correctly, is my understanding.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Councilmember Gordon Johnson. Okay, at this time we'll go to PAC member Allstrand.
Hi, yeah, thank you. Just a quick update on Last Chance Grade, making good progress on schedule. And we are looking for a replacement member for the working group. It was noted last month, I believe, but you weren't here, Councilmember Johnson, that we're very thankful for your effort in the working group. And if there's interest from HCOG to replace that effort, that would be great. Just some updates on projects in the US 101 State Route 299 Arcata Blue Lake vicinity. The 299 separation North Bank Road, the bridge was raised, and now we're working on the earthwork and approaches to the bridge, as well as paving and guardrail, and the work should be complete in early spring. There's work to repair and replace the culverts just east to that project, and that should start in June of next year. And then the Arcata 101 merge project for the northern ramps, State Route 299 to US 101, already achieved the ready to list status, and construction is scheduled for summer 2023. That's all I have unless there's any questions.
Do we have any questions for Pac? All right, well, thank you very much for that report, and we appreciate the info. And I believe that brings us to the end of our meeting today. And thank you all for your participation, and a special thank you to our board members that are leaving. Your work is very much appreciated, and we wish you luck in the future. And with that, we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.